the Cape's #1 community station, 1FM on 94.0.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 4th episode of #Biz Boost. It's the show which gets entrepreneurs ignited and excited to make business in South Africa. More specifically, we talk about the West Atlantic Seaboard, which of course is in the Western Cape, as we're part of 1FM 94.0. So you hear the show live every Wednesday between 3 and 4 on the radio station on 94.0. But on YouTube, we go internationally with the same advice. But of course, we're highlighting our local entrepreneurs who come to the studio here today. And a very, very warm welcome. When I say warm, this, by the way, in South Africa, it's cold. So it's a bit of a joke. But a very warm welcome to Shatel Booysen. How are you feeling? You're actually looking very summery, I must say.
Thank you, Ian. I'm doing fantastic today. Thank you very much. How are you?
You know, I had a great walk out in this cold winter walk today. And I think it really opened up a couple of receptors in my brain today.
Brave, you're very brave.
Thank you. And I got caught in the rain too, which is something I haven't done since as a kid. I just didn't have gum boots, so my shoes were wet. And a warm welcome to you, of course, Diane as well. And you're looking more like you're going into the greens of the winters of the.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to be all floral today. So.
Green is for growth and money.
Ah,
so it's a good one to wear on the show.
You've come to the right show. So none of this was done by accident, as you can see, folks, because they're all got dressed today with intention. And that's part of our topic today, is the accidental entrepreneur. So please introduce our guest.
Oh, of course. It's fabulous to have Mike Anzel here with us, a 25-year journey in the entrepreneurial space. And our title today is Accidental Entrepreneur. So tell us, what does that mean and why?
Well, thank you. And thanks very much for having me on the show. I really appreciate the opportunity.
No accident at all. We didn't.
So not only accidental entrepreneur, but accidentally walked past and got invited in. I know a number of people who knew from very young they wanted to start their own business. They had an idea, they had the backing, they had the background, maybe the family. But I've often joked about the fact that although I've been an entrepreneur for about 25 years on and off, it was never an intention at any point. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. Everyone I knew, everyone my parents knew was employed somewhere by the state or the municipality or the council or the schools. Teacher, doctor, nurse, work for whoever, the council. And the model was simple. You do well at school, get a bursary, go to university, get a job, which was the way it worked. So I did exactly that. Wasn't the brightest person in the room, but managed to somehow sneak myself a bursary, completed my schooling, studied for 5 years at university, did an honors. And in the background, I had an education bursary. So I had to go and start somewhere, and I started as a school teacher. Taught English in a high school in Cape Town. I won't mention it in case the people still out wanting to blame me for what happened to them in their lives after that. But I taught English for a number of years, worked back my bursary, and sort of felt, I'd done that, didn't want to teach forever. There were many things about teaching I did enjoy, I must say, but I didn't see myself as a school teacher in a class setting forever. I loved the educational component. And so I sort of started to put the feelers out to friends and others that I knew to say, look, what else could I do? And are there opportunities? And basically I was saying, is there another job out there for me? And that's how you sort of did it.
Without being blamed.
Extra lessons after school.
It could have been that. I could have been a tutor or whatever. And then I got introduced to two guys who had a consulting business. Now, back in the 90s, I didn't even know what a consulting business was, to be quite honest. I've since learned it's you just make up an opinion on something and charge people for it.
My goodness, I've missed my career.
and we can list the kind of money people have made offering their advice. But if you do know something about something, consulting is an environment, and I shouldn't make light of it. And I met with these two gentlemen. We had a great conversation, and they had a very good business in the labor relations space. They did a lot of consulting, supporting the employers against, when I say against unions, and obviously the employees side of it. And they felt there was a need for a training component to their business. And because I had the education background, why don't I join them and set up a training platform in their business? So that sounded great. It sounded like a job. And so I was keen. I put in my resignation at the school, as you'd have to. If you know this, got to give a term's notice. And went down the way with these guys. And ultimately, just literally before I joined them, they explained to me that it was going to be a cost center. At that moment, you have those moments in interviews or conversation, you think like, what does that really mean?
I'm sure we can do
And
it.
what it really means is that you're going to have to generate the income to cover your own salary.
Oh, goodness.
So at that point, I was sort of too far down the road. I'd already resigned. They'd already replaced me for the next year. And I'd already committed to this journey. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to do this. And that's why I joke about being an accidental entrepreneur, because it isn't something I ever intended to do.
Right.
But when I started in the new year, basically I had their client base, I had their facilities, I had some good content to work with, but there was no income, and I was going to have to generate the income. And that's perhaps what happens to a lot of people.
And they take also a portion of that too. So
Yeah,
so
it
you
worked.
got partners.
That's right. It worked that way. Now, again, there were a lot of upsides because the firm was very successful. The client base was extensive, largely in the hospitality industry. So I ended up doing some really nice work with some of the leading hotels in Cape Town and up in Johannesburg. But just the sort of thrown in the deep end, I was mentally not quite prepared for it even. Sort of just accidentally, you got to become the entrepreneur.
And any of that schooling that you did at university, did that prepare you at all for this?
No, not at all. The only stuff that I
With a master's degree?
No, the only stuff I could do was I could do the lesson plans. I could create the learning, but I wasn't ready for the business component. I'd never done a module in business. I hadn't done anything on sales. I had no official marketing expertise. So I was sort of, leaning on them for some guidance, but in many ways having to initially piggyback off their client base.
Of course.
But there are a few things I learned the hard way. So I don't know if I can just share some of them.
Yes, absolutely.
The first thing that I think I learned quickly was this concept of low-hanging fruit. Now, I didn't even know it before, and maybe people haven't heard that before.
Tell
but-
us. I've never heard of it.
Okay, well, if you can just imagine for a minute that you need to eat some fruit from a tree. Often the fruit higher up the tree looks amazing. It's the richest fruit, it's the most colorful fruit, it's probably the most tasty fruit, but it's going to require you to find a ladder and bend your back and get up there and maybe take a risk out on a branch. Whereas there's other fruit where you can just reach up and get it, on your tippy toes maybe. It's not quite as tasty, but it's going to get you fed. So the analogy really is that when you start in business as an accidental entrepreneur, where are the easy little bits of work you can pick off that people will let you do, even if it's a smallish, less tasty income, but it gets you started. And so quickly with these guys, I sort of said, basically, who are your best friend clients? They gave me 2 or 3 names. I went and saw them straight away. And I think, there's a bit of a charity factor. There's a,
I feel sorry.
I feel sorry
easy
for you.
business.
So the kind of easy pickings were the low-hanging fruits.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough then just to do a few small pieces of work, create 1 or 2 learning experiences for their staff, and just get going.
Which creates word of mouth.
Yeah.
Correct.
But it doesn't last very long, does it, Mike?
Doesn't.
Because your friends run out.
That's what I learned too. Charity only lasts so long. And then you actually have to have a legitimate offering.
Yeah.
And so I went the typical, possibly typical first route, which I learned perhaps isn't the best route, and that is you say, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll create a general course for all the clients. We'll welcome all, come and do a course on whatever. Only to find that people generally didn't like generic, general sort of training. They wanted specific, customized, unique to them offerings.
People don't really like anything that's generic, do they?
No. That's true.
They also want to feel special. They must be the only customer that you have.
Especially if you're paying.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why bespoke has become such a, new word, such a hip word. Everything is now bespoke.
Yeah.
It's customized.
But ironically, when you're thrust into a teaching environment to start with, you spend 4 years where you literally walk through the door at 8 o'clock and there's just classrooms of pupils waiting for you. You never really need to think about how do I actually make what I do desirable.
Yeah.
It's just, you're just busy all day, And I've got a lot of respect for teachers because they work long hours. There's all the sport components and all of that, but at least you're kept really busy because it's sort of all in place. Now you're suddenly working for yourself and you've got hours and hours of downtime. And there's quiet time and the phone isn't ringing maybe, and those emails you've sent out haven't been answered yet, or you've just set up an appointment for Tuesday and you've been waiting now for 2 weeks and then they cancel the day before because they're really busy and you're the young accidental entrepreneur trying to get going again. So I just found that those early low-hanging fruits really helped me get going. Charity only lasts for so long, so I needed to get past that quickly, and I needed to tailor the offering so that people started to say, okay, that's unique to us. We can see the value in that.
There you go. Accidental entrepreneur. Started out as a school teacher got offered a job, thought it was going one way, it went another way. And as you heard those points, low-hanging fruit, there's a point we've just learned today, I think, is a great way to get started, but you can't always sustain yourself as a business off low-hanging fruit. And a one-size-fits-all doesn't really always work with everybody unless it's a fast food chain. But I think even that now is becoming changed. I mean, how many times you go into a restaurant and they say, can I get a burger with no this, no that, add this, add that. So if you feel that you're an accidental entrepreneur, leave us a comment below and we'd love to hear your story, and who knows, maybe we can actually get a hold of you and get you in the hot seat as well. We'll continue chatting to Mike Anzel, the accidental entrepreneur, right after these. Welcome back to 1FM 94.0's Biz Boost. It's quite an exciting show here on episode 4. We're talking about accidental entrepreneurs. And it's like, are you walking down the street and suddenly you trip and bang, you're an entrepreneur? Well, maybe, you never know. Maybe you figure out how to stop falling hard. This could be a thing. And you sell that concept. But in studio today, Mike Anzel has told us about him starting off in the, I'm assuming 70s, 80s. You mentioned both years. So we'll just say 70s, 80s. And did what everybody did. Left school, went to high school, went to university, got a job with one of the statals, and then decided something was bugging him. He wanted to get out of teaching, but wanted a job. And then approached the company, and they said, "Yeah, come join us as a teacher." And only when he had packed up and left everything behind, they say he has to make his own money for that department. And part of that was learning the low-hanging fruit. This is how he got customers in first and to get the business running over. And of course, charity starts at home, as was mentioned all. But one of the big things that came through was a one-size-fits-all. And Mike started customizing the programs, which I assume led to getting higher up the tree.
Absolutely.
But before we go into customizing I still want to get in my mind, I still want to understand what's the difference between a true entrepreneur and an accidental entrepreneur. Just give me a rundown. What exactly is that?
Yes, I've over the years, I've spent a lot of time with entrepreneurs. Perhaps I'm sort of that person in the herd masking themselves as one and always feeling a little bit out. And asking them 2 questions, and I always get an interesting response. The first question is, have you ever considered applying for a job? And a true entrepreneur just looks you dead in the face and says, never. Never thought about that. I was always going to have my own business. I perhaps took over something from my parents or whatever it is. So the first kind of litmus test has always been, never looked for a job, and I have no intention of looking for a job. I'm going to generate my own income, I'm my own boss. And then I always remembered myself thinking, I've always looked for jobs. I've always been keeping an eye out for jobs. And the second sort of litmus test was, do you have any retirement annuities? And they look at you as if to say, what are retirement annuities? Because everything is locked up in the business.
Oh my goodness, I feel so much better now.
Well, and it's true. I mean, entrepreneurs really make their money when they sell.
Yeah.
They obviously live off the business, but they make their real money when they sell. And so there's no sense of retirement annuities or no kind of backstop. I think that's the point I'm making. The difference between
the family becomes the annuity. So.
Yes.
Sure.
Your children have to look after you.
My sons and daughters will take over the fish and chip shops.
Yeah, I'll take
They'll
it.
pay for the rent and
That's
everything.
it.
I'll be okay.
I'll look after you. But it's almost the difference is that the true entrepreneur doesn't really have the soft backup plan, the kind of parachute out of here. They're kind of
true,
they're
Mike.
in it, boots and all.
Yeah.
And so you realize when you're kind of drawn into that, you keep wondering where your parachute might be, but you're so far in. You're the accidental entrepreneur. You're in there.
Yeah.
You're having to make a living. You're having to convince clients. You're having to satisfy people's requirements, and you don't have that sort of luxury of there's a parachute to get out again. And I think a lot of it also comes down to the propensity for risk. True entrepreneurs don't seem to struggle with the risk components. Those risks are, they're financial, they're reputational, they're health, they're whatever it might be. So as the accidental entrepreneur, you're facing the same risks, but they're weighing a lot heavier on you because you're not necessarily wired in exactly the same way. So it's almost like you've been pulled into a space that you have to compete in and survive in, but it's perhaps just more awkward for you.
That's so
like
true.
A cowboy, like most entrepreneurs are cowboys. Let's go chase that calf bull, and we're going to grab it by the horns and bring it back in.
But I don't
Where
think
somebody would rather just sit there and say, "Well, you guys do it. I'll sit back."
But I don't think we think about it because I've often been confronted with a question. My husband would say to me, but what if this and this and this happens? And I thought, goodness, I never ever considered that. I'm going to do it. It'll be fine. What if it's not fine? We'll figure it out along the way. But you don't sit and plan on a spreadsheet the risks and the cash and if it happens. You don't.
And hence the insurance company industry was born.
Yeah.
The what ifs.
But if you plan for everything, you wouldn't be an entrepreneur because you would never get past that stage of planning.
Yes. And the risk you take. So you mentioned the insurance industry because I think it's 20 odd years ago now where a company started something in the insurance industry deliberately being opposite, and they called outsurance. Yes. Okay, so outsurance basically went about trying to do everything the industry wasn't doing. I mean, obviously they were doing the underlying insurance, but they were taking away the broker, they were doing call center. But I remember reading back in those days, I mean, they were heavily invested financially before they started to make any real money. So behind that idea, you still need entrepreneurs with real guts, real risk takers, commitment, believe in this thing. And I know entrepreneurs who've had their houses double bonded on their idea. Now listen, does everybody want a house double bonded?
No, you want to pay it off.
Maybe you haven't told your spouse. You've done some more borrowing somewhere, and it's all because this whole idea. And so for me, the true entrepreneur, they're that invested.
Most entrepreneurs are married in community of profit, are international.
Yeah.
So the wife can also get a bond.
If you can't burn, you burn on your own.
There's lots of tricks of the trade.
Do you think entrepreneurs, when you ask them that question, have you ever considered applying for a job or the retirement annuity? Do you think that they look at the classifieds and they look at the CEO jobs and they see the salary paid and they look at that number and it doesn't even click. They're like, I can make that in a day.
Yeah.
Do you think that's how the brain is wired? Or do you think they go, gee, I wish I could earn $200,000 a month like that guy?
No, I don't know. In my experience, entrepreneurs are not really driven by the paycheck. They're driven by the ambition of delivering on something. So they create an idea, they've got an innovation or a business that they believe would work. The execution of this thing is the great prize. And the ones who do it well end up making a lot of money, and they probably way out earn CEOs, although there are some guys listed in the paper now who make silly money. But it's for me, most of the entrepreneurs I've got to know and worked with, it's really about achieving that something, that sort of dream to reality.
It's that creative process, first of all. And I think the second part of it is, and don't misunderstand me, but it's power. So it's having the power over your own time, having power over how much money you can make, having power over what I do with today. And if I get up, I decide what's going to happen today. It's that being in control of. I think those are two things for me. Certainly, if I look at the classifieds and I see a salary, that's the first thing that would go through my mind is, all we have to do at my factory is open another country, and I can make that extra every month. So yes, absolutely.
It's just about the adrenaline and the achieving.
Yes.
You're looking for the next
sale. When you land that contract, that rush of landing the contract. Yes, we landed beautiful contracts. I remember one of the beautiful ones was when we got our spa products into the Fairmont Hotel in Monaco, which is the Grand Prix Hotel. Yes, and Princess Charlene, she goes there and she gets her pedicures there, and it was never ever a consideration about how much money am I now going to make because Charlene's getting our pedicure. It was always about, oh my word, we're in the Fairmont. I'm there, I've done it. And it was the same with the Knightsbridge Hotel in London. And it's that rush, but the money is never really it's that sale, yes.
And it's interesting, so that what you say about I've done it. I've also noticed that true entrepreneurs, they've done it, they relish in that moment, and then it's just not enough.
No, it's the next thing.
And it's not about greed or trying to just collect.
The next adrenaline
It's just the next achievement thing. It's what pushes us. And so just out of interest, there was a bit of content that I read some time ago about entrepreneurs and what they called intrapreneurs. And it sort of really resonated with me. So back to the idea of the accidental entrepreneur. In many ways, many of us are actually more intrapreneurs. And if you read the sort of definition, they work well with entrepreneurs. They're prepared to innovate, take on challenges, but perhaps with the shield of not facing the absolute risks.
The perfect GM.
Possibly.
Yeah.
That's
The
right.
perfect CEO.
I have a
And
GM
the
who's an entrepreneur.
perfect CEO. The guy's looking in the newspaper for the salary.
That's it. The question is, are you an entrepreneur? Have you ever considered applying for a job? That's your first question to ask yourself, and leave a comment below. And do you have any retirement annuities? The second question that gets asked. If you can answer no to any of those, you're an entrepreneur. Stay tuned.
A true one.
Biz Boost on 1FM 94.0. When we come back, I've got a special question for teacher here. I'm going to ask you, do you think entrepreneurs are the naughty kids that just couldn't get a job? We'll find out in a minute. Don't go away. Biz Boost, that's BIZBOOST, is available on 1FM 94.0 every Wednesday afternoon between 3 and 4. That's where you can hear it via audio. Otherwise, you can watch it right here on our YouTube channel. And you can, if you're listening to this on the radio at the moment, go to YouTube and search for 1FM 940. That's ONEFM 940. Before we went into the break, we asked the question to Mike, entrepreneurs, are they just the naughty kids that couldn't get a job? And I want to first explain that, because I think I have
'Cause
two
you could be
entrepreneurs.
in policy.
Entrepreneurs are
But you're an entrepreneur yourself,
and
Ian.
myself, but I was the naughty kid. The growing up, there was a certain style that you had to do. You had to conform this way, you all had to dress this way, you had to walk on the left, you had to leave school, you had to go to college or university, and you had to go join a parastatal. I was part of that process, although I was always anti the establishment, which made me a naughty kid. So, and to me, my vibe was always never to have to work for a boss, never to have to submit to that guy telling me, pull up my socks again. I wanted to walk with my socks down, my hair hanging, because somebody kept telling me that I couldn't do what I'm free to do. So do you think an entrepreneur is somebody who wants to break away from the norm? I guess is the question. Not the naughty kid, but I was the naughty kid.
Look, I think most entrepreneurs have a burning desire to make their own mark, leave their own stamp, whatever that is. And remember, when we talk about entrepreneurs, they don't have to be people who own businesses with thousands of staff and worldwide success stories. They're fantastic entrepreneurs who have small, niche, profitable businesses that people can live off and enjoy their lives on. But I think they're very driven by this desire to leave a mark, to
Create something.
some sort of legacy. Because, by the way, there are people that are incredibly successful in corporate structure, and they do amazing things for large organizations. They're also possibly rule breakers and boundary breakers, but they're comfortable in the corporate environment. But most entrepreneurs that I've got to know, they don't really like being told what to do.
No.
They like to ultimately get to the point, and I know it sounds generalizing, but they like to get to the point where they are managing their own destiny.
Yes.
And I understand that. I think all of us have that in us anyway. Some of us just perhaps have less of the inherent skill. And maybe that's part of what I was alluding to earlier. Less of the inherent skill and less of the inherent risk-taking ability to actually get it done. So I've always gravitated to working with entrepreneurs and when I've run my own business, because I've enjoyed that environment. And you mentioned earlier about the sort of life balance. I've had kids at school, and all over the years, I've always noticed all these other parents standing there watching sport midweek, and always wonder, what does that guy do? And what does that lady do? And then invariably when you talk to them, they have their own business.
Yeah.
And it's given them that ability to pick and choose the kind of, and so those are all the attractions to it.
They didn't have to sign the form Q702176
No.
for leave application.
Or lie to the boss
Yeah.
of a WhatsApp. Where are you right now? I'm just busy fetching that whatever,
Ciao.
and hoping no one's going to clap too loudly in the background.
Yeah.
So I think entrepreneurs are not necessarily rebels, but I think entrepreneurs are driven by the desire to leave a mark. And so that often takes them out of the mainstream into doing their own thing, running their own business.
I've seen some people come out of the corporate world, like you said, they're highly successful in the corporate world. You take them out and you put them in an entrepreneurial sphere.
Yeah.
Some do, and you're just like going, but you're the guy that just ran this massive conglomerate company.
Yeah.
But you can't get a shoe shop right that you started that was your passion. Coffee shop.
I think the difference is that entrepreneurs need to be able to enjoy their own themselves, not have to be part of a team. Whereas corporates, you've got to always be part of a team.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest changes.
And structure.
Yes,
Structure. Because
they
in
come
corporate,
out, it's a safe environment. For
corporate,
them.
you're not going to scrub the floor because it didn't look good when your clients walked in.
Yeah.
You're going to tell someone
To
that you're
do it.
employed to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas an entrepreneur, you walk to the store and the floor is dirty. You're going to clean it yourself
Straight away.
because maybe
Yeah.
your cleaner hasn't arrived. or you don't have one.
Yeah.
And you're going to do it because you've got to do what's got to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's also a very thick safety net underneath you in a corporate environment.
Yeah.
And it's not there when you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You know, the buck stops with you. If you make a mistake, you know what, you pay for it. If you make a mistake in a corporate, you get a hearing or warning or, I don't know, just, you know.
Said
you
that that's a
move
bad
on,
job.
It was a bad move.
But just on that thought, what I think is creating more and more accidental entrepreneurs is the fact that the one thing you can't control in a corporate is decisions getting made outside of your sphere to downsize, right size. And so when people end up getting told we're not going to require you anymore, you suddenly pushed
seen a lot
out.
of that in South Africa.
Yeah. So entrepreneurs then are closer to the reality of how much money they've got, how much money they have to make. Maybe that's what gets them up in the morning. And that's one of the things you get thrust into when you're not expecting it. Generate your
Suddenly
own.
you're an accidental entrepreneur.
Yeah, and it can happen to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was your biggest learning curve?
There are a few things that really stand out for me, I think, for the work that I've done and the entrepreneurs that I've worked around. The first one is that your name is everything. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't really separate the entrepreneur from the business. Whether the business is called your actual name, which some people do, they'll name it them, but people quickly know who the owner is. And then your name, your reputation's everything. And that's why you go the extra mile to make sure that it never gets tarnished. And that's why you lie awake at night hoping that your reputation is still intact. The second thing I've seen more and more, people love using this word narrative. Everything's a narrative and a journey, but it's true. Businesses need to have a story, and a lot of customers are drawn to the story of the entrepreneur. So I mean, I sit and watch TV at night, and you see some cooking show, and it's a third-generation Italian pasta restaurant. I'm already more drawn in because there's the grandpa, and there's the story, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs have caught on to this, and instead of just pitching it on their website somewhere, they're actually weaving the story into their product, into their whole execution of their business. And I think the story is powerful. Those are two things that stand out.
The retail industry in the United States have actually caught on to that, and I saw a very interesting way that they do it now in retail stores, because if you walk through a store like a At Home or you know, a Bath, Body and Beyond in the UK, normally there would just be shelves of products, but they needed to bring the story into the shop.
Yeah.
And what they've
Make it more
done
human.
is myself and Diane went on a retail tour in the US a while back, and we saw that they had round tables like this.
See what they call it now, a retail tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse for a shopping trip.
Brilliant.
It was a round table, and then products would be displayed in the store, and then in the middle would be a frame with a person. And then her story would be there. She comes from Africa, and she started out here. And so I'm looking at these products and here, or a little video. And then I would also look at the story and then move on and see, oh, they're black soap. And then read the story about this person.
Yes.
And so you buy into somebody's story, and that's why you buy the products. Very interesting how we've taken that whole narrative thing and brought it into retail. Yeah.
And then just the other thing, which I think most people know, but I'm going to remind ourselves and those watching, is that banks find it difficult to finance entrepreneurs. And I'm not knocking banks. I'm not here to be anti-bank. But very often there's just too many risks attached to what the entrepreneur is trying to do. Maybe there's not sufficient surety, collateral, all those bits and pieces. So as entrepreneurs, you've got to get very creative about where you're going to source your capital. That's the biggest challenge really for entrepreneurs. And there are many different ways, including your own family members. You know, that's where most people's stories start. Sadly, a lot of people's businesses are also linked to their home bond. Yeah. And we all know intuitively, maybe the accidental entrepreneur knows, maybe the real entrepreneurs don't. It's like, if this doesn't work, I'm going to lose my house too. But these are all the ways that entrepreneurs have to unlock the capital to get going with their businesses. And sometimes banks come on board to a degree, but I think that's the real challenge, because as an entrepreneur, you're trying to build a serious business, and sometimes you might employ 70 people and they need to get paid salaries too.
Yes.
And yet you don't have that safety net of the finance partner. And I think that's one of the things I've seen entrepreneurs managing that tension all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue with our conversation here on Biz Boost. Stay tuned. And when we come back, you get to also find out all our details on how you can get hold of us here at Biz Boost. Don't forget to stay tuned to 1FM 94.0. This is our fourth episode of Biz Boost on YouTube. And it's been quite an exciting one because we've been talking about the accidental entrepreneur, and in studio is Mike Anzel, who's come and told us amazing things about low-hanging fruits, about customizing your product to suit different your clients that you're approaching. And then the questions to ask entrepreneurs. Now, those questions, again, please reply at the bottom of our comments. Have you ever considered applying for a job? And do you have any retirement annuity plans? If you answer no to any of those questions, you're an entrepreneur. And then we spoke also about the biggest learning curve that was experienced by Mike as an accidental entrepreneur, and that is that your name is everything. Your business needs a story, you need a story, and the banks find it difficult to finance. You remember the days when you could walk to the bank? I remember being 18, 19, my very first car. I went in, there was a bank manager, his name was David. I don't remember his surname. First National Bank in Sea Point, the guy who ran it, his name was David. And when I spoke to him, he said to me, you need to earn a little bit more money here, you need this, but yes, I'll sign for you, and we can put the application to the West Bank. And I got my very first car. So 30,000 rands, and I had to put a 5,000 rand deposit down.
My goodness.
And I was earning like 2,000 at the time. So it's all obviously makes sense.
But there was a person.
There was a person that spoke to me. And I think if the next person behind me walked in, he would have said, no, you're not the right person. Now today, it's like anybody, somebody, and they just put your number, name, details into a computer.
Spits it out.
And it's high risk, sorry, bye.
Yeah.
Don't call us, we'll call you kind of.
Yeah.
All the entrepreneurs.
But that's it. And we've spoken about getting big finances through family and friends, and I'm assuming angel investors and those kind of crowdfunding. Which is on its own an entrepreneurial clash, as we spoke about, where somebody said, I can't get money from the bank. What am I going to do? Well, let's get all my friends to put in $1.
Yes.
And we can raise some funds.
There are even guys funding MBAs because you can't get funding for an MBA and they're very expensive. So
and if it's a great idea, I fund. Yeah. If I think it's something interesting, I fund stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's just $1.
Yeah.
So, last tips for our entrepreneurs and business owners. What have you got to say?
Well, if I stay with the theme of the accidental entrepreneur, I think I've got to be honest and say if a person finds themselves in a place where they've been forced to be self-employed and it's dramatically impacting their lives, health, marriage, whatever, then you've probably got to focus entirely on finding an employment opportunity. Just because by nature of the person that you are, you've got to focus on that. But if you have got some sort of ability to handle the challenges and the risks, which I think people suddenly find that they do have. A lot of people are still quite
enjoy it.
Yeah. The work-life balance opportunity really is there. And I've enjoyed that. I've been able to work and pop in and watch my kids play sport and do other things from time to time. I think the work-life balance is there. You're forced to create coalitions with other small businesses and you make some great friends. Yeah. And I've got substantial, really good friendships out of business. And I think the third thing is there's always the opportunity to land something special and really make a great return, which you might never get if you're employed. So that's the other side of it, is that if you're really at it and you're really working with the right
please call me situation.
It could happen. And you could end up with an amazing opportunity, deliver on a service that someone desperately needed and make some really good money. And before you look again, you could have the business you never thought you'd have. So my advice would be stick at it if you can, because it's worth it.
Fantastic.
And how can our listeners get hold of you?
I currently run a fintech business as well, so they can reach me at michael@intellicard.co.za.
Intellicard
with 2 L's. Intellicard. So it's a fintech business. It's like a debit card type business. We manage funds for people who receive bursaries. So I'm still back in the education type of space. And that'll be the easiest.
I am available on hello, HELLO, at shatelbooysen.com.
And I'm at Diane@brandanalytics.co.za.
If you feel you've got anything that you can offer as an entrepreneur, or if you've got any questions, just email us studio@1fm, that's ONEFM.co.za. Thank you again for watching our 4th edition. Every single Wednesday we upload our video, but also every single Wednesday on 1FM 94.0 in Cape Town, we play the audio version of this between 3 and 4. Together as one on 1FM.
The Cape's #1 community station, 1FM on 94.0.